Inclusivity is one of the most important foundations of all media, as well as society. The concept of inclusivity alone is objectively a good thing. Making your cast full of all different shapes and sizes of people, when it's appropriate, can potentially make your show more interesting. And as for society, the fact that individuals of all identities can live their life outside of discrimination is an amazing step forward for the progress of humanity. However, with all good things comes a bad as well. Due to the scars of the past, the concept of inclusivity is being misused and abused in our present by many individuals amongst marginalized communities, thinking it's justified simply because of their marginalized status. This results in a bizarre form of hypocritical discrimination, where something or someone appears to look inclusive on a surface level, but if you look at their work beyond its exterior, it's clear that it's also discriminatory towards others. This is a very toxic occurrence that I've been noticing amongst many modern pieces of media, companies, and even people. An occurrence I've decided to call inclusivity bias. Nubia, Real One, is a YA comic about the supposed sister of Wonder Woman, Nubia, race-washed and modified into a high school girl that uses her superpowers to stand up for black rights. Yeah, I've only said a single sentence describing this thing, and I don't think I need to say what's wrong here. It's abundantly clear that this is going to be yet another high school graphic novel where a hack writer uses a DC superhero to project her own ideologies onto her, but it gets far worse than that in this comic. You see, this graphic novel from a surface level tries all it can to seem inclusive. The main character being a strong black woman who don't need no man and is independent and all that, the constant advertising of starting protests in the story, and the list goes on. This comic, supposedly, wants to empower us marginalized blacks, which displays a desire for inclusivity. That alone would be perfectly fine, if it wasn't so goddamn preachy about it in its narrative. But here's the deal. This comic is extremely racist towards white people, and is also discriminatory towards anyone within an authoritative position outside of black culture, like cops, the government, and honestly just any normal white guy or girl minding her own business. I can't believe I have to make this statement towards another grown adult, especially a writer, but making a comic that's hateful towards the people who've wronged you doesn't make you a bigger person, it just makes you just as much as an a-hole as them. So, what inclusivity bias does this comic detail? Well, let's dive in and find out. Oh, well, actually, before we dive in, I need to make a statement. There seems to be a small portion of individuals that seem to think that this graphic novel is not racist, because the context is that it's a black lady hating on all white people, and that means it's not racist because it's blacks towards whites. And I want to make something extremely clear for the peanut gallery watching this video. If you think that, you are a f***ing moron. Racism is racism. Period. Black people hating on whites is just as racist as vice versa. If you are being hateful or discriminatory towards any other individual based off of their race or skin color, you are racist. Period. Full stop. The end. Now, since this is the first entry to this new series I'm trying to do, I'm just going to explain what's going on. Basically, I'm just going to point out a handful of scenes that display the bias of inclusivity. Let's go. The story begins with Nubia and her friends hanging outside of a convenience store. Right off the bat, it is page 1, and the display of inclusivity is lodged down your throat. The main cast is a group of black teens, and on page 2, the author is desperately trying to encourage the reader to participate in protests and shout for your rights and all that nonsense. Let's look at the dialogue briefly. Protesting is good for you, good for the soul, till tear gas canisters and rubber bullets starts flying. No one said it'd be easy, just necessary, and these grown-ass grown-ups ain't doing nothing, so it's on us. And then this girl goes, yes, and then starts snapping in applause, I guess? I don't know, this is maximum cringe. This is page 2. This is the second page of the comic. And the story isn't even trying to be subtle with what it wants young readers to do. Again, in all fairness, there's nothing wrong with wanting folks to stand up and speak their mind. The desire to want to inform your own race of young impressionable teens that you have to stand up and speak with your heart isn't necessarily a bad thing alone, provided it's handled properly. But let's be honest, if this was handled well, this video wouldn't exist, would it? This comic is supposed to be a bright, shining symbol for young black teens, which is very inclusive, but how do things continue to play out? And how are characters outside of the black culture sphere treated? Let's find out. A few pages later, Nubia relaxes in the pit stop store to grab a snack until some robbers try to hold the store up at gunpoint. And Nubia hides. At first, she's afraid of getting into a confrontation despite having superpowers, so she's actively choosing to not get involved, until she sees her obligatory love interest character also in the store and also getting attacked by the robbers. What were the odds? She uses her super strength to yank an ATM machine out of the concrete, specifically an ATM machine, and throws it at the robbers. Why she specifically chose that to throw, I have no idea why. And also, it gets even more nonsensical. After Nubia incapacitates the robber by throwing an ATM at them, the cashier clerk who was running the store, she just says, "Thief! Thief! That's a thief!" And she also somehow doesn't pay mind to the fact that a teenager just had the strength to dislodge a machine out of solid concrete. But, okay. She presses her security alarm button and points at Nubia, calling her a thief. So then, Nubia flees and runs away in terror. But I guess she didn't run fast enough because then the police catch up to her. And then they put her in cuffs. And then they throw her in a car, and then she says, "I bet that lady wouldn't call the cops on Superman." And then, after that, the police release her from minor custody because the love interest dude that Nubia saved told the cop that it wasn't her who robbed the place, and that's the end of the scene. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. Like, a lot. First of all, why did Nubia specifically choose to use an ATM as an object to toss at the robbers? Why did she even choose throwing something to begin with? She has super strength, can she not just punch their heads off? And second of all, why is this clerk lady's first instinct to call the cops on a black person who clearly has nothing to do with anything? And why is her first instinct to call the cops and press the security button thing instead of say, "Wow, how the hell did you have the strength to pull a machine out of the goddamn concrete?" Third of all, this character just openly used her powers in public in front of several people. Why is it that no one gives a shit and everyone in the scene is only worrying about a black person potentially stealing? The fact that the author of this book specifically wrote a white lady to just shout at a black person and say thief instead of be surprised that she literally yanked a machine out of the goddamn ground really does display the priorities of this writer right off the bat. Fourth of all, Nubia is completely shell-shocked by being put in cuffs in a police car, but why does she even care? She has effing superpowers. Like, I want to point this out because this comic is putting a lot of emphasis into the deep-rooted horror of being near police officers. Look at these panels. There's no dialogue. It's all dead silent, clearly trying to display the subtle horror of being wrongfully detained by the cops. But here's the deal. Why would she even give a damn? She has super strength, she can fly, and she doesn't hesitate to fight authorities later in the comic. So why would she even be afraid of anything that's happening right now? This makes no sense. And the writer of this piece of crap is embarrassing herself right now. It's trying to display the fears of crooked authority, but the main character is a superhuman. How did this author not realize that this does not mix properly at all? And lastly, and most importantly, why is it that very conveniently, every character with white skin in this bizarre scenario is painted as a brain-dead, one-dimensional bad guy? The robbers were white, the clerk lady who jumped to idiotic conclusions was white, the police officer who seized Nubia was also white. Huh. What a coincidence. This entire scenario up until this point is beyond contrived. It's beyond fabricated and poorly thought out and awkwardly patched together. And I'm sure it's just a total coincidence, but it all seems poorly contrived, all simply for the sake of demonizing all white people. But I'm sure that's just a coincidence though. This comic wants to teach young African American teens to stand up for themselves, which is very inclusive, but then it also tries to teach you fear. Blind, irrational fear. That you should be in genuine fear and hate and revulsion towards anyone with white skin. Setting aside the fact that this is also actually disgusting to read, it's also the polar opposite of inclusive. As I'm sure you guys expected, the superhero and superpower aspect, much like all young adult graphic novels, is just window dressing to whatever political agenda the author wants to propagandize. So don't be surprised if the superhero aspect only comes in at the last second, like it always does in this genre of comic. Let's move on to another scene. Later into the comic, this character gets introduced, a Caucasian male by the name of Wayland. Wayland is a white dude that has a hard-on for one of Nubia's high school classmates. Her name is Quisha. Oh my god. He invites Quisha to a cool house party that everyone is going to, but she refuses to go with him because this Wayland guy is a pushy creep, who is also white. Just thought I'd add that in. After bumping in with the creepy guy, Nubia and company retire to a bathroom and have a chat regarding the creepy predator dude. During the conversation, they imply that this guy Wayland was a woman beater who attacked her previous girlfriend or something, but thanks to his privileged white people status and his evil, wealthy white family connections, he managed to keep her quiet. Right, so we got white people that wrongfully accuse people of being robbers, white people that actually do rob banks, and now we got a white person that is a serial abuser. What a coincidence. Nubia knows about the house party as well, since her love interest boy is going there too, so days after the scene, she sneaks out of her house and gets to the party by flying over there. I want to believe that this is supposed to add to her character, but I know for a fact that it is not, and this is just another lazy-ass excuse to remind you that this is a superhero comic. Kinda like how I Am Not Starfire randomly has shots of superhero stuff happening in the background, while in the foreground, the main plot is meandering through Mariko Tamaki's high school diary. Anyway, time skip over to the party. During this sneak out into a house party, Nubia is enjoying herself a lot. She dances with the poorly drawn background crowd, she has a bump-in with her love interest guy who's a total beta male by the way. She parties with her close friends and slow dances with the beta male love interest dude. Also, I just want to point out that all male characters relevant to Nubia's personal circle all look like girls for some reason, but I won't get into that. Overall, everything seems like a grand old time for Nubia and company. Until something happens that spoils the fun. What happens, you ask? An evil white person has to show up and ruin it for everyone. That one white dude, Wayland, who I was talking about a second ago, is trying to force herself on top of Nubia's stupid friend Quisha, clearly trying to violate her. That's okay, cause Nubia is coming to the rescue. She stops the intrinsically evil Caucasian and saves her friend Quisha from the dastardly clutches of the white man. Wayland is drunk as hell and gets angry for being blue-balled, so he tries to attack Nubia and fails, as displayed in these action shot panels that are embarrassingly poorly drawn. So he swings and tries his hardest to hit her, but his strikes only landed thin air, as Nubia's superior black combat skills are obviously light years ahead of a dumb white person's fighting skills. Guys, I'm just trying to narrate this the same way I think the author was thinking when she was writing this. Anyway, yeah, the white dude, Wayland, calls Nubia a monkey, and this triggers and shell-shocks Nubia, and thusly gives Wayland a chance to give her a single, devastating punch. Oh no! But that's okay, because Nubia is so epic and badass that she doesn't even feel it. Cause she's like superpowered and stuff, so she grabs him and lifts the dude up, and mother of God, this is so horribly drawn, I'm trying my best not to bust my ass laughing right now, and then tells the guy to say it again. And Wayland is a pussy that's inferior, so he just sits there quietly. And then Nubia's like, yeah, that's what I thought, bro. But that doesn't stop Nubia from giving him the most epic punch of all epicness. Yeah! She knocks her out with one punch. And that's basically everything that happened. Oh, and also, after the scuffle, Nubia specifically says, and I quote, glad I knocked him on his mayo ass, man. Once again, this is another contrived scene that makes no sense. There's a dude trying to beat a woman in a public house party. How has no one gotten up and broken this fight up by now? I've been to plenty of house parties. If this shit happened in real life, this would have been broken up in a nanosecond, bro. I can go in deeper and pick it apart some more, but I'm not going to because I feel like you guys get the gist of what's wrong with this comic by now. I wanted to highlight this scene and put emphasis on what this comic really wants, what the motive of this story really is. This comic does not give a shit about inclusivity to black culture. The story tries to make you think that right from the start, with the very second page glamorizing protesters, which seems super inclusive, but as soon as you progress into the meat of this comic and bump into scenes like these, it's beyond clear that the purpose of the story is just to scare you into hating whites just as much as the author does. That's not very inclusive. And also, about the Mayo Boy comment, that's not very inclusive either. In fact, there's a very different word for that that's almost the polar opposite to inclusive. It's called blatant racism. And it's legit disgusting to read. It particularly pisses me off to read this too, because if this scenario was about a white guy that was like punching black people and says, yeah, I knocked him on his charcoal ass, I knocked that tar baby out, everyone would be losing their f***ing mind over this shit. I really don't enjoy having to say, as a black person, before I start my sentence, like that even matters, but here we go. As a black person, this double standard bullshit pisses me off. Racism is racism. Period. Like, who is the author of this book again? L.L. McKinley? This girl is f***ed up in the head, bro. It's like this lady's perception of Caucasian Americans comes from the goddamn 1800s. This woman's perspective on life is sheltered as f***. Okay, let me wrap this up with one of the last scenes in this book. The school shooter scene. Yes, I am serious. I don't even think I need to say what's wrong with adding a school shooter scene to your comic about Yas Queen Girl Boss racists, but I still will. This comic has been pretty f***ing goofy. This art style even goofier, so having a scene featuring pretty much the worst thing someone can do to a public establishment doesn't feel very appropriate? Like, imagine if there was a new Fortnite season that took place in the Ukraine, or a Harry Potter fanfiction that discusses Brexit, or a Zootopia fan comic that talks about abortion. That would throw you off, right? That's the vibe you get when you see this garbage. By the way, one of those 3 examples I made up is actually a thing that exists. I'm not gonna tell you which one it is. But yes, let's dive in. It was just another day in school, and randomly in the intercom there's a shout to all classes, Nubia's included. This is not a drill! Lockdown! Active shooter alert! And the classroom reacts accordingly, shoving all desks and etc. at the door and hiding for their life. Anyway, Nubia hides and continues to do what she basically did last time, saying that she doesn't have to get involved, she doesn't have to be a hero, and yada yada yada. But then, something sparks her desires to be one. What is it, you ask? Is it a sudden memory that gives her the confidence to go hero? Is it a realization that she should utilize her powers for good? Nah, it's none of that. What actually happens is that Nubia finds out that the person doing the school shooting is Wayland. You know, that one white guy from the party that Nubia knocked on his mayo ass, quote unquote? Yeah, him. I'm not gonna explain how she finds out because it's stupid, but okay, you know what, actually, someone sees a picture of him shooting the school up on his phone, which makes no friggin' sense. The point that I want to get at is this. Of course, a white man did this. Only white people can do mass shootings, right guys? Right? Right. Anyway, she uses her super strength to break out of the classroom effortlessly, and then starts to bum rush across the empty halls to find Wayland with a pistol. She's about to shoot Quisha because she didn't let him bang her back at that party? Once again, this all makes zero sense that this Wayland guy would even care. He even specifically says in this comic that he just wanted to bang a black lady because why not? So it makes no sense that he would care this much about this random ass girl to the point that where he would do a school shooting for it, but hey, he's white, so that means he's automatically evil. Nubia saves her, and after that it's like a battle between the two, which is really dumb. The scene plays out like this, right? Wayland thinks he can paint Nubia as the criminal and the person doing the shooting, which makes no sense? Okay, that's not exactly what's happening right now. To be specific, he thinks he has the ability to frame himself as the hero to the authorities when they come up, because he's gonna kill Nubia, and he has footage of Nubia attacking police officers earlier in the story. That sounds like actual retardation, right? like literally something that makes zero sense. But in the narrative, it's treated like that's a legitimate threat. Like, what is Nubia going to do? Oh snap, looks like he has the upper hand. And it's like, no he doesn't? There's literally no way he can do that? I don't think I need to explain how that's completely impossible. I swear to God, the author of this goddamn comic seems to think that, like, white privilege is some kind of anime superpower where, like, it just defies all logic or something like that. But anyway, Nubia says, like, no, not at all. You can't use your white privilege anime superpower. I'm recording what you're saying right now, so you actually can't do that. And oh my god, this comic is so f***ing stupid. Why would he be able to do that to begin with? Boys, do I even need to explain what the hell is wrong with the scene? Like, this entire world's narrative seems to run under this weird hidden context that if a bad thing happens, everyone automatically assumes a black person did it by default, which is not how real life works in any way, shape, or form. Like, all of these scenes that I've been highlighting and talking about only make sense under the context that the author legitimately is just a mentally sick racist that legitimately believes that all white people are these one-dimensional evil gremlins or some shit, you know what I mean? It's insane. This book is insane. This book is legitimately like diving into the mind of a mentally unstable person. Like Chris Chan's comics, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna narrate what happens next. You know how it plays out. The bad guy loses, the good guy wins. Black people superior, white people inferior. That's the message of this goddamn book. Okay, so what do all of these scenes that I just displayed to you have in common? Aside from the very blatant racism, it's the fact that it tries to teach young African Americans to not be afraid and stand up for themselves, but it also does this by demonizing one other race. And that's this entire comic in a nutshell. It wouldn't be bad enough if all these themes didn't come at the reader with the subtlety of a cheese grater against your nutsack, but the comic also highlights anyone that doesn't have dark skin to be some one-dimensional Saturday morning cartoon supervillain. Boys, I'd read this entire comic all the way through twice just to make sure. I'm not exaggerating, I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic right now. Every single person in this story that does something bad or annoying or generally negative is a white person. Do you think that's just a coincidence? You think it's a coincidence that this comic basically says black power over and over and over and over, and then also paints every single person of white skin as some intrinsically evil, dumb, ignorant douchebag that causes trouble, or wrongfully demonizes people, or just kills people, or beats people, or rapes people? You think that's all a coincidence? The answer is no, it's not. Boys, I want to make this clear. I have not even scratched the surface with this piece of garbage. I haven't told you everything. I didn't talk about how the whole reason why Nubia is scared of using her abilities is because of her fear of oppression that the average white people gave her. I didn't talk about the generic love interest beta male that gets shot by the police for another stupid, ill-contrived reason. I didn't talk about how Nubia has a parent character that literally, word from word, says that she does not need to grow or learn anything as a person, and she's already amazing and perfect and she just doesn't realize it yet. I didn't talk about how SWAT officers suddenly want to shoot Nubia because they thought her bracelets were a weapon? What the oh my god. And it doesn't stop there. I know I've said this before, but I want to say it again. If the skin colors were swapped in this goddamn comic, literally everyone on Twitter would be losing their fucking minds over this. And mainstream news articles would be crying and crying left, right, and center. But oh hey, it's racism towards a non-marginalized group, so it's A-okay. And this supposedly A-okay racism is still present. You can still buy this in a local comic shop near you. This book is still on shelves, people. Nubia Real One is a comic made by a clearly hateful, clearly biased person. This writer, L.L. McKinley, based off of the way that she's writing, seems to just have a very deep-rooted, irrational hatred and disgust for white people. And while I am angry at her, I will admit that I also kind of feel bad for her too, since this entire comic feels more like a paranoid cry for help from a mentally and emotionally unstable author, as opposed to an empowering tale. But at the end of the day, if you believe someone is being racist, you can't counteract it with even more racism, only sugar-coated and barely veiled as a crappy comic for teens. You can't be anti-something while doing that something to the people that you hate. Sorry, but it doesn't work that way. This graphic novel wants to look inclusive on a surface level for black people, but it also very clearly discriminates towards the author's perceived oppressors, quote-unquote, i.e. white people. And that is why Nubia Real One is a prime example of inclusivity bias. And since we've reached the end of the video, it's time for the Patreon roll call. My $10 supporters are Stormy Knight, Duke Dragon Hearthfire the 10th, Ellamations, Joseph Vincent, Procrastinator Dave, Red Pixel Racer, and Cintron7. And let's not forget our $5 supporters, Zephyr Zodiac, Ayon, Dark Damien, Dragonlight Z, Elijah Holland, Phaedra, Justin Ciccone, sorry, Italian accent, Travis, Wolfman, and Yumi with a gun. I think I'm going to keep that in the video. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm going to keep that in. But anyway, if you'd like to support me as well, just catch me on patreon.com/blacklightjack. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.